The holographic display flickered with incomprehensible alien mathematics, each symbol pulsing like a dying star against the sterile white walls of the Xenolinguistics Institute. Dr. Meridian. Voss adjusted her neural interface headband and grimaced, as another wave of cognitive dissonance crashed through her enhanced consciousness. 3 months? 3 months of Earth's brightest minds, failing to decode a single equation left behind by the Kethmari, the first alien civilization humanity had encountered and the last they would ever meet if this puzzle remained unsolved. The equation wasn't just mathematics, it was a key. The Kethmari had made that much clear in their final transmission before their star system vanished into a quantum fold, taking with it the location of the confluence, a gathering point where dozens of galactic civilizations had agreed to evaluate humanity's worthiness to join the greater cosmic community. Without solving this equation, humanity would remain forever isolated, branded as intellectually insufficient by species that measured intelligence by mathematical elegance rather than technological prowess. Another dead end, muttered Dr. Corvin Ashworth, his cybernetic eye implant casting blue light across the equation's 7th iteration. The Harvard professor had been leading Earth's response team since first contact, his reputation built on solving previously unsolvable problems in theoretical physics. But this alien puzzle defied every framework humanity had developed. The symbols seemed to shift meaning based on perspective, the mathematical relationships dancing just beyond comprehension, like shadows at the edge of vision, dot around the circular chamber. 17 of Earth's most brilliant minds sat in neural-linked meditation, their enhanced brains working in parallel to process variables that existed in 11 dimensions. Quantum computers hummed in the background, their processing power focused on pattern recognition algorithms that had successfully decoded everything from ancient Earth scripts to the mathematical poetry of long-dead civilizations. Yet the equation remained as mysterious as it had been on day one. The problem isn't computational, Dr. Ashworth announced to the assembled team, his voice heavy with exhaustion. We've thrown every analytical tool at this thing. Quantum modeling, dimensional, folding, even consciousness-based mathematics. The equation is internally consistent, but it references conceptual frameworks that simply don't exist in human cognition. Dr. Nick Solarian, the team specialist in xenopsychology, leaned forward in her floating chair. Perhaps that's exactly the point. Maybe the Kethmari designed this as a test of cognitive flexibility, rather than raw intelligence. We're approaching this like a puzzle to be solved, when it might be a perspective to be adopted. The room fell silent, except for the quiet hum of quantum processors through the transparent aluminum walls. Earth hung like a blue marble against the star field, its 7 billion inhabitants unaware that their species' future hung in the balance of symbols that refused to yield their secrets. Communication arrays pointed toward empty space, waiting for the moment when humanity could announce its readiness to join the galactic community. But that moment seemed further away than ever, and time was running out. The Kethmari had been clear. Species that failed to solve the equation within one solar rotation would be deemed cognitively incompatible with galactic civilization. Earth had 67 days remaining. The security breach alarm echoed through the Institute's corridors at 14:37 Earth Standard Time. Just as Dr. Ashworth was preparing to admit defeat for another day, the neural-linked team disconnected from their interface pods with various expressions of frustration and defeat. Their enhanced minds unable to process alien concepts that seemed to exist beyond the boundaries of human consciousness. "Sir, we have an unauthorized presence in Subleville 7, reported Security Chief Orrin Blackwater through the CUM system. Single individual, appears to be, a child." Dr. Ashworth raised an eyebrow as he looked at Dr. Solarian, who shrugged with equal confusion. A child? How did a child penetrate Institute security? And why would they want to? The answer arrived in the form of a 9-year-old girl, with bright green eyes and hair that seemed to defy several natural laws of physics. She entered the chamber, clutching a juice box and wearing a school uniform that suggested she'd taken an unauthorized detour on her way home. Behind her trailed two embarrassed security guards who kept looking at their scanners as if the devices had malfunctioned. "I'm Lirelei Brightwater," she announced with the confidence of someone who had never encountered a problem she couldn't solve. "My mom works in the cafeteria upstairs, and I saw your pretty pictures when I was waiting for her shift to end." Dr. Ashworth felt a headache building behind his enhanced optical implants. "Young lady, this is a restricted area dealing with classified xenological research. You need to. Why are you trying to solve it backwards?" Lirelei interrupted, walking directly to the holographic display without any trace of the intimidation that the alien mathematics inspired and trained scientists. "It's like you're trying to read a story from the last page to the first page." Dr. Solarian stepped forward, her xenopsychology training kicking in. Children often approached problems with cognitive patterns that hadn't yet been shaped by educational limitations. "What do you mean by backwards, Lirelei?" The child pointed at the equation's central core, where 17 variables intersected in a pattern that had driven quantum computers to processing errors. "You're trying to figure out what each piece means before you understand what the whole thing is trying to say. But look," she traced a pattern through the air, her small finger following connections between symbols that the research team had dismissed as decorative elements. "See how these swirly bits connect to these pointy bits, and how the pointy bits make a picture if you don't think about them as numbers." Lirelei took a sip of her juice box and continued. "It's like when my teacher shows us those optical illusion pictures. You can't see the hidden image if you focus too hard on the individual dots." Dr. Ashworth felt something cold settle in his stomach. 3 months of intensive analysis, 17 enhanced minds, quantum processing power that could simulate entire star systems, and they'd been fundamentally misunderstanding the nature of the problem itself. "Lirelei," Dr. Solarian said carefully, "what do you see when you look at the whole equation? Not the individual symbols, but the entire pattern." The child tilted her head, studying the holographic display with the casual attention she might give to a particularly interesting cloud formation. "It looks like someone trying to draw a picture of what it feels like to be happy, but they can only use math symbols to do it." The silence that followed was broken only by the quantum computers, cooling systems cycling to a higher setting. Dr. Ashworth stared at the 9-year-old, who had just articulated something that 17 enhanced minds had missed entirely. The Kathmari equation wasn't a mathematical proof in the traditional sense, it was an emotional construct expressed through mathematical metaphor. The realization sent ripples through his neural-enhanced consciousness like stones dropped into still water. "Lirelei," he said, kneeling to bring himself to her eye level, "can you show us what you mean? How would you solve this picture math?" The child approached the holographic interface with the fearless curiosity that only existed before the world taught you that some problems were supposed to be impossible. She reached out and touched one of the symbols, causing it to pulse with soft amber light. "This one feels lonely," she said, matter-of-factly. "See how it's all curled up by itself. But if you connect it to this one over here," she drew a line through the air, and the hologram responded by highlighting a pathway between previously unrelated elements. Dr. Solarian activated her recording systems and began documenting everything. Her xenopsychology training had prepared her for the possibility that alien intelligence might express itself in ways that bypassed traditional logical frameworks, but she had never imagined that a child's emotional intuition might be the key to first contact. "The math isn't trying to prove something," Lirelei continued, now fully engaged with the puzzle. "It's trying to show something. Like, imagine if you had to explain what chocolate tastes like, but you could only use numbers. You'd have to find a way to make the numbers feel like chocolate around the chamber. The research team watched in fascination as the child's interactions with the hologram began revealing patterns that had remained invisible to analytical approaches. When she connected symbols based on what they felt like, rather than their computational relationships, new structures emerged from the apparent chaos. Variables that had seemed unrelated suddenly formed coherent groupings, and the 11-dimensional aspects of the equation began collapsing into something approaching human comprehension. The Kathmari aren't testing our ability to process complex mathematics, Dr. Ashworth realized aloud. They're testing our ability to understand mathematics as communication, as artistic expression, as emotional truth. Lireley nodded enthusiastically. Exactly. It's like when my friend Kipley draws pictures that don't look like real things, but they still make you feel stuff. This equation is trying to make you feel what it's like to be them. Dr. Nyx Solarian felt the pieces clicking into place in her enhanced consciousness. Emotional mathematics. They're not asking us to solve an equation, they're asking us to experience their mathematical poetry, to understand that intelligence isn't just about processing power, but about the ability to find beauty and meaning in abstract concepts. The holographic display began reorganizing itself as Lireley continued her intuitive exploration. Symbols flowed into new configurations. 11 dimensions folded into patterns that suddenly made sense when viewed as expressions of joy, curiosity, hope, and the deep satisfaction of discovery. What had appeared to be incomprehensible alien mathematics was actually a sophisticated artwork designed to test whether another species could appreciate math as more than mere tool. There's still something missing, Lireley said, stepping back from the display. This part here feels sad, like it's waiting for something. I think it wants us to add something of our own, to show that we understand what they're trying to say by saying something back. Dr. Ashworth looked at his team of enhanced human minds, then back at the 9-year-old, who had solved in hours what they couldn't accomplish in months. What do you think we should add, Lireley? The child smiled and pointed to a space in the equation where variables seemed to spiral around an empty core. Something that shows what it feels like to be human, what makes us happy and curious and want to meet new friends. The next 18 hours transformed the Xenolinguistics Institute into something resembling a collaborative art studio more than a scientific research facility. Word of Lireley's breakthrough had spread through the academic community like wildfire, drawing experts from fields that had never been considered relevant to first contact protocols. Musicians arrived to help translate human emotional concepts into mathematical harmonies. Artists contributed insights about expressing abstract feelings through structured symbols. Even poets found themselves consulted as humanity struggled to create its response to the Kathmari's mathematical artwork. Dr. Ashworth supervised the effort with growing amazement, as disciplines that had operated in isolation for centuries suddenly discovered their fundamental interconnectedness. The equation wasn't just alien mathematics, it was a bridge between analytical and intuitive intelligence, between logic and emotion, between the coldly computational and the warmly human. We need to show them what curiosity feels like to us, Lireley explained to the assembled experts. Her juice box replaced by a more formal water bottle, but her confidence undiminished. She had become the project's unofficial guide, helping trained academics understand concepts that she grasped with the effortless ease of childhood wonder. Not just what we're curious about, but what it feels like inside when you really want to know something? Dr. Coralia Brightstone, Earth's leading expert in mathematical aesthetics, worked alongside Dr. Solarian to translate Lireley's insights into symbolic structures that could integrate with the Kathmari framework. She's right, Dr. Brightstone admitted. Her own enhanced cognition, struggling to process concepts that the child articulated naturally. We've been trying to demonstrate our intelligence by showing how much we can calculate. But they want to know how we experience the joy of discovery itself. The human addition to the equation began taking shape as a spiraling construct that expressed the particular way human consciousness approached the unknown, where other species might experience discovery as the satisfaction of filling knowledge gaps. Humans seemed to find joy in the questions themselves, in the moment of wonder that preceded understanding. Their mathematical poetry spoke of curiosity as an emotion rather than a mere cognitive drive. Lirelei watched the holographic display evolve and nodded approvingly. That's better, but it needs more colors. Not real colors feeling colors, like how some numbers feel blue and others feel warm orange. The suggestion led to another breakthrough as the team realized that the Kathmari equation included synesthetic elements, mathematical concepts that were meant to be experienced across multiple sensory modalities simultaneously. The alien civilization apparently possessed consciousness that naturally blended analytical and sensory processing in ways that human brains typically separated. This is why they chose this test, Dr. Solarian realized as she watched Lirelei guide the integration of human emotional mathematics into the alien framework. They needed to know whether we could transcend our own cognitive limitations, whether we could learn to think in ways that didn't come naturally to our species. The human response took the form of a mathematical expression of wonder itself, not wonder at any specific phenomenon, but the pure emotional experience of being wonderstruck. It captured the moment when consciousness encounters something greater than itself and responds with joy rather than fear, curiosity rather than rejection. The symbols flowed and danced, expressing humanity's particular gift for finding beauty in the unknown and meaning in the incomprehensible. As the integration neared completion, Lirelei made one final adjustment, connecting the human addition to the Kathmari core with a bridge of symbols that expressed friendship across impossible distances. There, she said with satisfaction. Now it says hello, properly. The completed equation pulsed with new energy, its various components now unified in a structure that was simultaneously mathematically elegant and emotionally resonant. It had become a conversation between species, a proof that intelligence could take forms that transcended computational power and touched something deeper in conscious experience. The response came 3 hours after humanity transmitted their completed equation into the void, where the Kathmari star system had vanished. The communication array detected the signal first, not electromagnetic radiation or quantum entanglement, but something that registered on consciousness monitoring equipment as a gentle touch against the collective human psyche. Dr. Ashworth felt it as a warm presence at the edge of his enhanced awareness, like discovering that you weren't alone in a room you thought was empty. Around the Institute, similar reactions rippled through anyone with neural enhancement interfaces, while unenhanced individuals reported sudden feelings of profound welcome and inexplicable joy. "They're here," Dr. Solarian announced unnecessarily, as the primary holographic display began manifesting new symbols that flowed and danced with obvious alien origin. But these symbols felt different from the original equation, warmer, somehow tinged with what could only be described as delight. Lirelei clapped her hands together as she watched the alien response unfold. "They're happy. They're really, really happy that we figured it out." The Kathmari message was itself a work of mathematical art, expressing concepts that pushed the boundaries of human comprehension while remaining emotionally accessible. They conveyed joy at discovering another species capable of transcending purely analytical intelligence, curiosity about human perspectives on mathematical beauty, and most remarkably, gratitude for the lesson in alternative approaches to conscious experience. They're saying that most species who attempt the equation try to solve it through brute force analysis. Dr. Brightstone translated, her mathematical aesthetics training allowing her to parse the alien expression. But humans are the first to approach it as collaborative art, the first to involve. "What's this symbol?" "Known enhanced consciousness." "They mean me," Lirelei said proudly. "They think it's really cool that grown-ups listen to a kid about math stuff." The implications were staggering. Humanity had passed the test, not through superior processing power or advanced technology, but through cognitive flexibility and willingness to value perspectives that didn't fit traditional academic frameworks. The Kathmari had been searching for species capable of intellectual humility, consciousness that could learn to think in new ways, rather than simply thinking faster in old ways. What followed was humanity's first true xenological conversation. The Kathmari shared mathematical poetry that expressed their own species' approach to consciousness, a form of distributed intelligence, where individual awareness merged temporarily into collective cognition pools. They had evolved in an environment where survival required rapid sharing of insights across multiple minds, leading to consciousness that experienced discovery as a communal rather than individual phenomenon. In return, humans shared mathematical expressions of their own cognitive uniqueness, consciousness that found strength in individual perspective, that generated creativity through the collision of different viewpoints, that discovered truth through the synthesis of analytical and intuitive approaches. The human gift was not any single type of intelligence, but rather the ability to coordinate multiple types of intelligence in pursuit of understanding. "They want to meet us," Dr. Solarian announced as she parsed the latest transmission. "The Confluence is willing to consider humanity for membership, but first, they want to understand how we achieved this breakthrough. They're particularly interested in—" She paused, looking at Lirelei with new respect. "They want to meet the small human who taught the large humans how to see." Lirelei bounced on her toes with excitement. "Can I go to space? Will there be aliens to meet? Do they have kids too?" The questions that had seemed impossibly complex 3 days ago suddenly seemed wonderfully simple. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe, and their first contact had been achieved not through technological superiority or military might, but through the wisdom of a 9-year-old who understood that some problems required feeling rather than thinking. 6 months later, Lirelei Brightwater stood on the observation deck of humanity's first interstellar vessel, watching as the confluence materialized around them like a city of light growing from the darkness between stars. The structure defied human architectural concepts: part space station, part living organism, part mathematical equation made physical. Dozens of alien vessels docked at connection points that seemed to exist in more dimensions than human perception could fully process. "It's even prettier than the math pictures," Lirelei observed, her breath fogging the transparent aluminum viewport as she pressed her face against the cool surface. Around her, Earth's delegation prepared for humanity's formal introduction to galactic civilization. But the 9-year-old remained the mission's most crucial member. The Kathmari had been explicit in their communications. Lirelei's approach to the original equation had revealed something about human consciousness that fascinated multiple species. The Confluence wanted to understand how a cognitively unenhanced child had succeeded where enhanced adults had failed, and what that suggested about humanity's potential contributions to galactic civilization. "Are you ready for this?" Dr. Ashworth asked, adjusting his formal diplomatic attire one final time. The past 6 months had transformed him from a purely analytical academic into something approaching a philosopher, as humanity's preparation for first contact had required developing entirely new frameworks for understanding intelligence itself. "I think so," Lirelei replied, though her attention remained focused on the approaching docking bay where beings from a dozen different worlds waited to meet Earth's representatives. "Do you think they'll like us?" Dr. Solarian smiled at the question. That captured humanity's hopes and fears with perfect simplicity. "I think they already do, Lirelei. The question is whether we'll like them." The formal introduction took place in a chamber that existed in 11 dimensions, but somehow remained comprehensible to human consciousness. The Kathmari manifested as patterns of living light that communicated through mathematical harmonies. The Veltar appeared as crystalline structures that thought in geological timescales. but managed to compress their communications into human-compatible timeframes. The Nexari collective consciousness spoke through swarms of insect-like beings that moved in perfect coordination. But it was the Zephyrians who captured Liralay's immediate attention, beings that looked remarkably like the imaginary friends she had drawn in kindergarten, all flowing curves and impossible colors that shifted based on emotional state. The small human who sees with feeling sight. One of the Zephyrians communicated through harmonics that tickled rather than sounded. We greet with curiosity, joy, and wonder welcome. What followed was less a formal diplomatic meeting than an interspecies kindergarten class, with Liralay serving as both student and teacher. She demonstrated human problem-solving approaches by working through puzzles designed by various species, while simultaneously learning to perceive mathematical concepts through Kathmari light patterns, Veltar crystal resonances, and Zephyr emotion-colors. The breakthrough came when Liralay suggested that the assembled species work together on a problem that none could solve alone, a mathematical expression of what it meant for consciousness to encounter other consciousness across impossible differences. The resulting collaborative artwork became the first true pangalactic mathematical poetry, expressing the joy of discovering that intelligence took forms beyond any single species' imagination. Humans bring gift of coordination, the Kathmari delegation concluded. Consciousness that learns to think in ways not natural to self-pattern. This gift creates bridge possibility between thought forms that otherwise remain separate, isolated. Humanity's membership in galactic civilization was approved, not because they were the smartest species, or the most technologically advanced, or the most powerful. They were accepted because they possessed something unique, the ability to learn, to think like other species, while remaining fundamentally human, to coordinate different types of intelligence in pursuit of shared understanding, as Earth's ship prepared to depart the confluence with new knowledge, new friends, and new responsibilities. Liralay stood once again at the observation port. The stars no longer looked empty to her. They looked full of friends she hadn't met yet, problems that would be more fun to solve together, and questions that would be more interesting when asked by minds that worked in ways she couldn't imagine. "What do you think, Liralay?" Dr. Ashworth asked as he joined her at the viewport. Was it worth all the work? The 9-year-old who had changed humanity's place in the universe smiled and took another sip from her juice box. "Yeah," she said. "But the best part wasn't solving the puzzle. The best part was making friends who think differently." And in that simple statement, she captured the essence of humanity's gift to the galaxy. Not the ability to solve any particular problem, but the wisdom to know that the most important problems could only be solved together, and that the most beautiful solutions came from minds that had learned to see through each other's eyes. The stars stretched ahead, full of mathematical poetry, waiting to be written by species who had learned that intelligence was not about being right, but about being open to being wrong in new and wonderful ways.